Chapter 23, The Empty Book. They won't let me visit him the first day, and Graham says I'll just have to be patient and let the doctors do their business. But I can't stand just sitting around, so I decide to walk over to the hospital, which Grim says is miles and miles, but suit myself. I know how to get there because Freak and I went yonder and that way once, so he could show me the medical research building. It's not the same, though, without Freak along to turn the houses into castles and the swimming pools into moats. All I keep thinking is what a jip it is to have to go into the hospital on your birthday. Finally, I get there and I see the fair Gwen's car in the visitor parking lot. But Grim says I should leave her alone and let her tend to her son. So what I do is go back around to the medical research building and find this stupid little tree I can sit under. I have the old ornithopter bird with me and I'm winding it up and flying it around, figuring maybe Freak will get a chance to look out the window and see it flittering by. That's my plan. And I'm under that puny little tree messing with the bird until this guy mowing the lawn makes me move. So I wander around to the front of the hospital, and that's when the fair Gwen finds me. "Maxwell," she says, and she gives me this great big hug, a wet hug because she's been crying. "Max, we've been going looking all over for you. Kevin wants to see you. He's making quite a fuss about it, and Dr. Spivak says it's okay, but just for a few minutes." So the fair Gwen takes me inside, and I figure we're heading for the medical research building, but instead we go into the regular hospital. "He's in the ICU," she says. "So they're taking really good care of him?" "They're doing their best, Max," she says. The intensive care unit is this place where there's so many nurses, you can't hardly turn around without bumping into one, which I do as soon as we get there. Every patient gets a room alone, and there's all this electronic gear the fair Gwen says is only telemetry, which means when Freak sneezes, the nurses know about it before he can wipe his nose. I'm not scared at all until I actually go into his room and see how small he looks on the bed. They've got him sitting up with all these tubes going into his arms and up his nose, and Dr. Spivak is guarding him. She won't let me come too close. "I thought no visitors was the best policy for now," Dr. Spivak says. "But what Kevin wants, Kevin gets." Dr. Spivak is this small woman with short red hair and a real stern face. And it's like she's mad because Freak wants to see me, or because I'll break some of her precious equipment. "That will be all," Freak says to her. "You are dismissed." The thing is, his voice sounds funny. Not just faint and weak, but kind of whistly. Only when I get closer do I see he's got this weird little plastic button stuck in his neck. "It's called a tracheotomy," he says, holding his finger against the button, which stops the whistling noise. "Standard procedure to facilitate breathing." "Does it hurt?" "No way," he says. "I think it's cool. Listen to this." Then he plays with his finger against the button, making his throat whistle a tune, which he says is the theme from Star Trek, although you can hardly recognize it. "So when do you come home?" I ask. Freak can't move much the way they've got him set up in the bed, so he sort of shakes his eyes instead of his head. "I'm not coming home," he says. "Not in my present manifestation." I go, "What?" "The bionic unit is on red alert," he says. "Tonight they'll take me down there for my special operation. The next time you see me, I'll be new and improved." "I'm scared," I say. "Don't be a moron," he says. "You're not the one having surgery." I still wish they wouldn't. "Don't argue with me," he says. I have to lean close to hear him because his voice is so small and whispery. He goes, "If you argue with me, I'll get upset, and then they can tell on the telemetry, and then you'll get in trouble." So I just stand there like a lump and don't say anything for a while. I put the ornithopter on the foot of the bed, but I don't think he notices. "See that book on the table?" he asks. He can't point, but I see the book on the table. "Open it," he says. The book reminds me of the dictionary he gave me for Christmas, except when I open it, all the pages are blank. That's for you, he says. I want you to fill it up with our adventures. Huh? Write it down, dummy. I was gonna do it, but now it looks like I'll be busy getting used to my new bionic body. It'll probably take me weeks just learning how to walk with long legs. I put the book down. You're the one with the brain, I say. I'm the long legs. Don't get me upset, he warns. I won't have the time, so you'll just have to do it. Just write it all down like you're talking. Put in all the fun we had, the cool things we did, our adventures. But you know I can't write, Kevin. It's all in your head, Max. Everything you can remember. Just tell the story of Freak the Mighty. No big deal. I pick the book back up, but I don't say anything more about how hopeless it is, me trying to write stuff down, because I don't want to set off the telemetry. He does that himself about a minute later when he starts to cough, and before I can say anything, the room is swarming with nurses, and Dr. Spivak is telling me I have to leave. Out this second, young man, and let us do our jobs. They let me wait outside the ICU with the fair Gwen, who is just standing there at the window wringing her hands and not saying anything. And then finally they come out and say he's okay, it was just a bad spell, that they have stabilized him. A while later, Graham comes into the hospital and she drives me home. Nobody talks much at supper that night, except when Grim opens his big mouth and says, Poor Gwen, looks like she's in terrible pain. I go, Poor Gwen? She's not the one having the special operation. Grim and Graham just look at each other like they can't believe I'm so dumb. And finally Graham says, Maxwell, dear, make an effort to eat your vegetables. That night I put the empty book in the pyramid box for safekeeping and for good luck. Chapter 24, The Return of Kicker. The deal is I'm not supposed to bother anybody at the hospital. Yeah, right, like me being there is going to screw things up. The way everybody is acting around here, you're supposed to shut up and not do anything but wait, which makes me crazy. So early the next morning, when Grim is still snoring loud enough to rattle the window panes, I get up and sneak out of the house. The way I figure, I can check on Freak and be back in time for breakfast. No harm done. Doesn't work out like that, to say the least. The sun is just coming over the mill pond, and there's this spooky mist on the water. You can hear all the frogs making a racket under the lily pads, and the mosquitoes sound like bullets whizzing by, and I have to kind of slap and run until I get clear of that smelly old pond. Moving fast, like the sun is chasing my heels, I'm running down this long, faint shadow of me that stretches out ahead. You can't ever catch up with it. I'm thinking with my feet, like the rest of me is still asleep. Not that I'm completely alone. There's this one old guy, he's actually out cutting his lawn. He's got these headlights rigged up on his rider mower and he's wearing pajamas too, like it's normal. Everybody does it. When I get to the hospital, the street lights are just starting to click off. The lobby is empty and there's nobody at the desk to tell me I can't be visiting patients at the crack of dawn. There are plenty of nurses in the ICU, though, and they see me coming. This one woman runs right out from behind the telemetry station, and she's got her hands up to her mouth, and I'm pretty sure she's trying to shush me, even though I'm not making any noise. She's not telling me to be quiet, though. She's saying, Oh my God, you must be Maxwell, even though she's never seen me before in her life. I go, Yeah, is Kevin back yet? Oh dear, she says. Is he gonna be okay? Oh dear, she says. Oh dear. Now more nurses are coming out of the ICU. One of them is the one I accidentally bumped into yesterday, and when she sees me, she goes, Better page Dr. Spivak. Kevin was her patient. That's when I notice that some of the nurses are crying and looking at me strange, and all of a sudden, I just go nuts. I'm saying, No way. No way. And this nurse is trying to throw a hug on me, and I push her away. And then I'm running down the hall, and it's like I'm Kicker again, ready to just blast anybody who dares touch me. And I have to keep running. I'm skidding around the corners and bumping into walls, and no one can touch me, even if they're brave enough to try. I just keep running and running until I get to these glass doors that say medical research. The doors are locked and it's dark inside. Behind me, people are shouting to call the guards, and I punch my hand right through the glass, and I'm inside, skidding over broken glass through the dark, and I keep going until I come to this other set of doors. No admittance. No glass this time. They're solid, so I can't punch through. And I'm kicking and slamming into the doors, and that's when all the hospital cops catch up with me. A bunch of them jump on me, and I keep going, running around in circles like an accident of nature until finally there are so many of them on me, I can't stand up anymore. They're putting handcuffs on my wrists and my ankles, and they're sitting on me and going, "We'll have to medicate him." And this one cop says, "With what, an elephant gun?" That's how Dr. Spivak finds me, covered with cops. She's this worried face leaning down. Her eyes are red and blurry, and she's saying, "I'm sorry, Maxwell. We did our best. Better let me bandage up the hand. You're bleeding." "He believed you," I say. "You said you could give him a new body, and he believed you." "What are you talking about?" "The special operation," I say, "the bionics unit." Dr. Spivak makes the cops let me up and says she'll be responsible. But they leave the handcuffs on me just in case. And the cop who was talking about needing an elephant gun has this nightstick out and he's ready to bop me if I make a move. Dr. Spivak sighs and says, "Somebody get me a coffee, please." And then she looks at me and goes, "You better tell me all about it." So while she's bandaging up my hand, I tell her about how Freak has been coming to the medical research lab every few months to get fitted for his new bionic body. And Dr. Spivak's face goes soft, and she nods to herself and says, "Well, that explains it." "It was all a lie, wasn't it?" I say. "You were just telling him that so he wouldn't be scared." "You know better than that, Maxwell. You couldn't lie to Kevin." "I tried a little fib on him when he was about 7 years old because I didn't think a child could handle the truth. You know what he did? He looked his disease up in a medical dictionary." That's when I knew she's telling the truth. Freak in his dictionary. "Kevin knew from a very young age that he wasn't going to have a very long life," she says. "He knew it was just a matter of time." "So he was lying about getting a robot body?" Dr. Spivak is shaking her head. "I don't think it was a lie, Maxwell. Do you? I think he needed something to hope for, and so he invented this rather remarkable fantasy you describe. Everybody needs something to hope for. Don't call it a lie. Kevin wasn't a liar." "No," I say, "but what happened to him really?" "I could tell you all the medical terminology," she says, "but what finally happened is his heart just got too big for his body." There was talk about arresting me for busting up the hospital. The cop with the nightstick was in favor. But finally they released me into the custody of Grim. On the way home, he goes, "Do you want to talk about it?" "Just leave me alone," I say. "You got it," he says.